Level 1, the curious kid. You're 13 years old and you're standing in your aunt's kitchen in Portland during a summer visit, watching her temper chocolate on a marble slab for the first time in your life. She's not a professional. She took a weekend course 11 years ago and never stopped. You watch her move the chocolate back and forth with a metal scraper, coaxing it through temperatures you don't understand yet, and she explains that chocolate isn't simply melted and cooled. It has to be coaxed into a specific crystal structure, or it comes out dull and soft and wrong. You don't understand the science. You understand the result. She snaps a piece in half in front of you, and it breaks clean, with a sound like a small crack of thunder, and the surface catches the kitchen light in a way the cheap chocolate bar in your backpack never has. She lets you try. Your first attempt seizes, turns into a grainy, useless paste, because you let a single drop of water fall into the bowl without realizing water is chocolate's actual enemy, more than heat, more than time. She doesn't get frustrated. She just says, chocolate punishes carelessness immediately and forgives almost nothing. You'll hear a version of that sentence for the rest of your life. You go home and beg your parents for a bag of Coverture chocolate, the real kind, not baking chips, and spend the next 2 years ruining batch after batch on your own kitchen counter, learning through failure what nobody explains well in videos. Level 2, the home chocolatier. You're 18 now, and the kitchen counter has become an actual workspace, a marble slab you bought secondhand, a digital thermometer you've replaced twice after dropping it, and a small collection of polycarbonate molds you ordered from a specialty supplier in Belgium, because the domestic ones warped under repeated use. You're selling small batches now, mostly to neighbors and your mother's co-workers, packaged in wax paper you fold by hand because you can't yet afford proper boxes. Your first real order is for 80 pieces for a co-worker's retirement party. You underestimate how long tempering takes at that volume, and you're up until 2 a.m. the night before, working in batches of 12, because your slab isn't big enough to do more at once. 11 pieces come out with bloom, a pale gray streaking across the surface that means the temper failed, even though it looked fine when you poured it. You know you can't deliver those. You throw them out, remelt what you can, and finish at 4 a.m. with exactly enough good pieces and nothing to spare. You deliver them exhausted and shaking from caffeine, and the woman at the party tells you it's the best chocolate she's had outside of Paris. You go home and sleep for 11 hours. You also start reading obsessively now. Cacao percentages, conching times, the difference between Criollo, Forastero, and Trinitario beans. Because you've realized the chocolate itself, not just your skill with it, is where the real differences live. Level 3, the pastry kitchen apprentice. You're 22 and you've taken an entry position at a respected pastry kitchen in Seattle, working under a chocolatier named Henri, who trained in Lyon for 6 years before moving to the States. Henri doesn't compliment easily. Your first week, he watches you temper a batch and says nothing until you're finished, then quietly points out that your crystal seeding technique is inefficient. You're cooling too much chocolate to add back in, wasting time and product for no gain. He shows you the correct ratio in 4 minutes. You feel simultaneously embarrassed and grateful, an emotional combination you'll experience many more times over the next few years. Henri teaches you that professional chocolate work is almost entirely about consistency at volume, not creativity, the opposite of what you assumed coming in. You learn to temper 40 kilograms at once, using proper tempering machines, not marble slabs, though he insists you master the slab method first because, he says, if you understand it by hand, you'll always understand what the machine is actually doing when something goes wrong. 6 months in, a large custom order for a corporate event goes out with a fine white bloom nobody catches before delivery. The storage room's temperature had spiked during a heat wave and nobody adjusted for it. The client is furious. Henri takes responsibility to the client's face, then privately tells the team that storage conditions are now everyone's job to monitor, not an afterthought. You never again assume someone else is watching the thermostat. Level 4, the Chocolatier. You're 26 and you're running the chocolate program independently now. Henry having moved to open his own shop across town. Still in touch. Still someone you call when something genuinely stumps you. You've started sourcing your own cacao directly, rather than using pre-made couverture, working with a small importer who connects you to a cooperative of farmers in Ecuador, growing a rare national variety. You make your first trip to visit the farm itself, a decision that changes how you think about the entire craft. You meet a farmer named Rosa, who has grown cacao on the same land her grandfather cleared, and she walks you through the fermentation boxes where beans sit under banana leaves for 6 days, developing flavor compounds that no amount of skill in a kitchen can create afterward if the fermentation was done poorly. You realize, standing in the humidity with fermenting cacao around you, that everything you've learned about tempering and technique is downstream of a decision made by a farmer you'd never met until this trip. You start paying above market rate for her cooperative's beans, not as charity, but because you've tasted the difference and you understand now that quality chocolate is a supply chain, not a technique. Level 5, the bean-to-bar producer. You're 31 and you've opened your own small production facility, controlling the process now from bean to finished bar. A phrase the industry uses like a badge because so few people actually do it. You bought a used mélangeur, a granite-wheeled machine that grinds roasted cacao nibs into liquid chocolate over 48 hours from a producer in Vermont who was retiring for $14,000, more money than you'd ever spent on a single piece of equipment. Your first large batch using Rose's beans goes wrong in a way you don't expect. The roast profile you developed on a small sample roaster doesn't scale correctly to your new commercial roaster, and an entire 200-kilogram batch comes out with a harsh, over-roasted bitterness that overwhelms the delicate fruit notes you paid a premium for. You lose almost $3,000 in raw material and a week of production time. You call Rosa to tell her, embarrassed, expecting disappointment. She tells you something instead that you repeat to your own team for years afterward. The bean can only be as good as the person handling it after me. You go back and rebuild your roast curve from scratch, testing in increments of 5 degrees until you find a profile that finally honors what she sent you. Level 6, the recognized craftsman. You're 36 and a bar you made using a single-origin Madagascar cacao wins a silver award at the International Chocolate Awards, a competition judged blind by professionals who don't know whose chocolate they're tasting. You didn't expect to place. You'd entered mostly because Henri, still a friend, insisted you stop being modest about your own work. The award changes your business almost overnight. Wholesale accounts start calling you instead of the reverse. A specialty grocery chain in 3 states wants to carry your bars, and a food writer for a national publication asks to profile your process. You say yes, then spend a week terrified you'll say something that makes you sound like you don't know what you're talking about. You don't. The article runs, and orders triple in 2 months. You also learn, at this scale, that growth without infrastructure is its own kind of failure. You miss 2 wholesale delivery windows in the same month because your small team can't keep pace, and you nearly lose an account before catching up. You hire your first full-time employee the following week, a decision you'd been putting off for a year out of a stubborn belief that only you could do it right. Level 7, the mentor. You're 43 and you've trained 6 chocolatiers who've come through your kitchen, 3 of whom have gone on to open their own shops. You find yourself repeating Henri's exact phrases to them without meaning to. The same emphasis on consistency over creativity, the same insistence on understanding the slab method before touching a machine. You call Henri one afternoon just to tell him this, and he laughs and says, "That's how the craft actually survives, not through recipes, through people repeating things to other people until it becomes instinct." You also take on a formal apprentice for the first time, a 19-year-old named Diego, who reminds you sharply of yourself at that age, over-eager and under-patient. He seizes his first real batch exactly the way you did at 18, a drop of condensation from a lid falling into tempered chocolate, and you watch his face fall the same way yours did in your aunt's kitchen. You tell him what your aunt told you. Chocolate punishes carelessness immediately and forgives almost nothing. You watch the sentence land in him the way it landed in you, 25 years earlier in a country away. Level 8, the authority. You're 51 and you've been invited to judge the same International Chocolate Awards competition you once won, sitting blind alongside chocolatiers from Belgium, Japan, and France, tasting hundreds of entries over 3 days without knowing a single maker's name until scores are finalized. You take the responsibility seriously in a way that surprises even you. Every bar in front of you represents someone's version of the exact obsession that took over your life at 13 years old in your aunt's kitchen. You also consult now for cacao cooperatives in 3 countries, helping them understand what buyers in the specialty market are actually looking for, translating between farmers and chocolatiers the way almost no one in the industry is positioned to do, because you've spent real time on both ends of the chain. Rose's cooperative, now exporting to 11 countries, credits part of their growth to relationships you helped build. You didn't set out to become a bridge between a farm in Ecuador and pastry kitchens across 2 continents. You just kept following the thing that mattered at each stage, and the bridge built itself. Level 9, the legacy. You're 62. Diego runs his own bean-to-bar operation now in Chicago, sourcing from a different cooperative, but using a roast testing method he learned standing next to you, adjusting in increments of 5 degrees the way you once had to relearn from scratch. Henri retired 2 years ago and sends you a card every year on the anniversary of the day you started working for him, a small joke between 2 people who both know exactly how much that first year actually mattered. You still keep a small marble slab in the corner of your production facility, the same size as the one you bought secondhand at 18, though it's clearly not needed anymore given the equipment surrounding it. You use it once a month, alone, early in the morning before anyone else arrives, tempering a small batch by hand, just to feel the chocolate move under the scraper the way it did the very first time. Before you understood anything about crystal structure or conching times or the 6 days a bean spends fermenting under banana leaves before it ever becomes something worth calling chocolate. Somewhere right now a kid is standing in someone's kitchen watching a relative work chocolate on a countertop, not understanding the science, only understanding that something in the result feels important. They'll ruin their first batch. They'll let something small go wrong and watch years of patience get punished in seconds. They'll find out, the way you did, that this is exactly how it's supposed to start.